Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Cellar Chats. Here at the Second Glass, we're in the cellar, we're tasting wine, and man, is it beautiful outside. It's Tuesday. Just a reminder, the wine flights start on Wednesday because they are closed here on Tuesdays. But we film on Tuesday because, well, we like to give you a little teaser what you're about to experience this week when you come in for a wine flight. And we're going to Lodi. And as the title suggests, the land that time forgot about the amazing vineyards that are all over Lodi. So we're kicking it off this week with such a pretty little, this just screams springtime, right? Pax Vermentino from the Clements Hills within the Lodi AVA. Rolling on over to our good buddy Patrick Capiello's Monte RioCellars for his Zinfandel. And then rounding it out with the ever so tasty Time Place Mourvèdre. Always a gem, always delightful. I hate to harp on the weather because, this is a quick video talking about wine that you're going to enjoy, but we are experiencing what I would call near perfect springtime weather. It's chilly in the morning right now, beautiful and warm during the day, but not so warm that it's uncomfortable. It's still kind of like jeans and a t-shirt kind of weather, which I qualify as perfect springtime. Outside the pollen, which is always detrimental to me, couldn't ask for better weather, truthfully. It is crystal clear skies. It's great. Get outside. Come here. Hopefully it's supposed to be this nice tomorrow. You can come, have an amazing flight, and sit outside. Just take up the whole patio. Please do it. All right. Kicking off, like I said, Pax Male with his Vermentino from the Clements Hills. Just talking briefly about Lodi, and I've said it before, sure I'll say it 100 times more, but it's an area that really has a common perspective that is so unfair. And there's a reason why you get there, but, most of the wines that I think most drinkers, the general public has come into contact with from Lodi are just over-extracted, very poorly made, and oftentimes not excellent representations of the area. And that's really sad because this is an area that has a long wine growing history and some really, really great down-to-earth farmers who have basically kept things in the ground and growing for decades that would have never lasted if they were in Napa. Things like really old vine Zinfandel and Mourvèdre and grapes like Mission/Pais and Cinsault and some of these things that have a long history of being grown and cultivated in California, but don't have the prestige of Cabernet or Pinot Noir or Chardonnay or what have you. Case in point, Vermentino. One of those grapes that I have a fondness for. They can be slightly fruity, they can be a little more textured depending on how you make them, but for the most part, they tend to be really bright and fresh with a little bit of salty, kind of saline minerality. And they're not hyper acidic, but they're also not flabby. So they kind of run that sort of unicorn level of there's something happening on the palate, but it's also not going to make me feel like I ate a stick of margarine or that I just had a custard dessert. It's not enveloping on my palate. But also doesn't feel like Riesling, which is really high in acid. And although I love Riesling, sometimes that acid is too much for me, and I don't think I'm alone there. But that said, we're talking about Vermentino, and we're talking about Lodi. On the nose, kind of like a citrus rind, leaning more like Meyer lemon, which is, I think, a little bit sweet, but also slightly more bitter than regular lemon. Oh my goodness. Lots of texture. Really pretty. Again, that citrus fruit, maybe leaning a little bit more towards I don't want to say tangerine, but leaning more away from lemon and into that orange realm. A little bit floral. Really pretty. There's also a little spice, kind of green herbaceous spice characteristic, in the best, most complex way. Not in a way that's off-putting, but in a way that's very pretty and delicate, which Vermentino is known for. Classically you'll find Vermentino in lots of parts of Tuscany, But really where it shines are in places like Liguria, on the Italian Riviera, and then in Sardinia, and also you'll find it in Corsica, which is part of France, but it's really close to Sardinia. And you also find it throughout the southern France, although in France it's usually labeled as rolle, R-O-L-L-E. So it makes a lot of sense. Lodi is a fairly dry, arid climate. They do have cooler nights, which brings a lot of acidity, so it makes a lot of sense out here, and this wine really showcases that. Wow. So good. Vibrant, clean. Really, really liking that. That is, again, as the label in my opinion says, summertime in a bottle. Pax Vermentino. So pretty. All right. Hopping on over to Patrick Cappiello's Monte RioCellars. Kind of been, I would call a staff favorite here at Second Glass. You know, Celeste has been a fan of this wine from these guys for a while. It's been on by the glass here for some time now. And it kind of bounces back and forth. She likes to keep it fresh, but it goes back and forth at least once or twice a year. And fun fact is that it's actually made in the same facility as Pax's. So Patrick and Pax are really good buddies. And Zinfandel, kind of like Lodi, has a misconceived idea about it. And going back to what I was saying about Lodi, I'm jumping all over the place today. Sorry, guys. So, you know, it's not that anybody was wrong in feeling like those wines were big and flabby and jammy. But what happened, in my opinion, is that this was an area that has so much history and so many great vineyard sites and so much great farming that you can make really great wines. It's just that few people were making wines that showcased the place. They were really showcasing their skill set in making a certain type of wine. And Zinfandel's kind of the same way. Zinfandel, for a long time and still to this day, most people will see it as either white Zinfandel, which is sweet and looks rosé, but it's not fair to call it a rosé because then we get all kinds of misconceived ideas about rosé. But also, dry red Zinfandel tend to be big and rich and jammy, and that's not wrong because there are a lot of them that are that way, and Zinfandel itself lends itself that way. It ripens really easily. It can accumulate a lot of sugars. It has the ability to make high octane, very textured wines with minimal ease. So when that was kind of the boom and people were loving that as a whole, again, I'm generalizing here, that was what Zinfandel became known for. And as things have kind of shifted and, you know, not most people, but the large portion of the population is not looking for wines like that, Zinfandel is sort of relegated to only being that, and that's really not the case. Case in point, again, apparently that's my quote today, or my statement today. Monte Rio Zinfandel, all the brambly, blackberry, juiciness that you want on the nose, but on the palate, there's still freshness, and it's not overwhelming. And I will point out, this is only 13% alcohol. It might be the lowest alcohol Zinfandel I've ever seen. Now, I don't buy wines based on alcohol, but if I see a wine that's 16% alcohol, I might question whether or not it's really for me. Just not my style, I should say. Everything you want from Zinfandel. Like I said, that brambly, raspberry, blackberry kind of pie characteristics, a little bit of dried herbs, juicy fruit, but this has structure, has tannins. There's plenty of beautiful acidity that keeps it from feeling like I just drank a thing of cough syrup, which I have had Zinfandel that feels like I'm drinking cough syrup. And to me, that's not exactly appealing. Now, you know, that wine obviously was not made for me. This wine could have been made for me. It's pretty spot on. All right, again, that was Monte RioCellars. There's Zinfandel Old Vines. This comes from, if I remember correctly, 90-plus-year-old vines in Lodi from the Shergill, I think is the name of the vineyard site. So some pretty old vine fruit there. All right, going on over to our friends over at Time Place. Their Mourvèdre from Lodi. This wine, we've featured it before, and we're doing it again for a good reason, because the wine is so delicious. Now, Mourvèdre, that's fun. Yes, I did just break the cork on camera. You're welcome. That's almost as good as the time that I broke the bottle or the glass on camera. Let's see if I can save this. This was very strange. So, first time I've ever had this happen. And because I'm on camera, I'm going to explain what happened. So, if you look at the cork, so this is like a re-corrugated cork. Up at the top, there is like a little cap that goes on it. And then at the bottom, there's a little cap. Well, on this particular bottle, the cap just popped right off as I was pulling it out of the bottle. Literally, I've never experienced that in my life. Not that I've been in this forever, but I have been doing this for close to 10 years. So, all right, moving over. Time, place. Oh, wow. So this is a project from Jamie Whetstone. Really great guy, local to Southeast Carolinas, grew up basically running around this area. His Time, Place label was like kind of a new project, not maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. You know, and really kind of doing similar to what a lot of the wineries that we talk about, or that at least I talk about, like re-championing these grape varieties that have a long history in California that have been overlooked. Oftentimes you can get the fruit for much more reasonable prices, which means as like a bootstrapped or a young up-and-coming winemaker, you can actually make wines and not have to shell out hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the fruit, and then not to mention trying to like make it and bottle it and market it, which is just a daunting task in itself. So he works a lot in the Lodi as well. And Jamie's wines, what I like about the wines at Time Place is that they kind of bridge that gap between like what I would call the hyper fresh, like really like kind of crunchy, fruit driven, but also like brighter freshness, acidity wise, of like the up and coming things like Pax and Monte, which I think kind of live in that camp where like it's really about freshness and liveliness. Jamie is a little bit more old school, I would say, and he has a little more richness, but still like very well balanced. And his Mourvèdre is so pretty. So Mourvèdre, commonly found throughout southern France, used in like Rhone style blends, found all over like the Languedoc and throughout. Really in Provence is really where it comes to shine. Like red still wines in the Provence oftentimes are made from Mourvèdre. Also known as Mataro. Also known as, I think there's another name for it, but I can't remember what it is in Spain. But you find it all over Spain. A little more like, kind of like stone, like wet stone, hot stones, kind of minerality on the nose. A little plum, blackberry, a little more like baked blackberry, whereas like the Monte was like really jammy, fresh blackberry. This has got a little more density and richness to it. Wow. Kind of like rich on the palate, a little more intensity, really great texture, a lot of roundness, but not overwhelming. Such a pretty wine. And it's, again, we're doing that progression as usual. You know, one of these weeks I'm going to do like an anti-progression. We're going to go backwards. We're going to start really heavy, and we're going to go finish with something light and bright just to mess with you. But this is like, to me, shows what Mourvèdre can be when like treated really well. It has that freshness, really beautiful fruit purity, lots of texture, a lot of roundness. I mean, if you're a big fan of like Cabernet or something of that nature that's a little bigger and heavier, you're really going to love this. But it's also not going to overwhelm you if you like more simple like red blends or like California Pinot Noirs. Like you could still enjoy this wine, and I think you will. So it's perfect for summertime, perfect for grilling season. So pretty. Again, let's do the quick wrap up. Starting out this week, the wine flights: Pax Vermentino from the Clements Hills, Monte, Zinfandel, Old Vines for the second one, and then finishing it, the always lovely Time, Place, Mourvèdre. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be safe out there. Go out, support your local businesses, support local restaurants, drink wine, be good to your people, say hi to your family. We'll see you next week.